Tribe, welcome to Tough Girl Extra, which is slightly different from the normal podcast. This is when we go back to speak with previous guests, and I'm delighted we're going to be catching up with Sally Kettle. Sally Kettle, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I am fabulous, thank you. So this is basically an unedited, more raw version of the Tough Girl podcast. So I spoke with Sally back in 2015. You were one of my first guests. I think you were...
I know.
Yeah. You were part, because I launched with 4 episodes. And you were one of the women. Woo-hoo!
Oh my God, 2015. So has it been 4 years already?
It's been 4 years. And
wow.
And since then, I've met you face to face quite a few times, because you came to Wirral and you did a talk at the Rotary, which was amazing. And I remember sat there thinking, oh, I'd love to do a talk in the Rotary and just basically, I want to be you. And then like 3 years later, I was up there talking, which was pretty awesome.
Yeah, that is pretty awesome. Well done, you.
Oh, and then we were together in 2018, because you came to the Women in Sports Trust Be a Game Changer Awards, and you were like sat next to me and being like super calming and like, it's going to be fun.
I half knew you'd won. And I was half telling you that you'd won.
But it was literally, I think it was one of those ones where you just not, you can't really take it in, so you're probably not really listening anyway. You're just like, nervous.
And also, it's, if somebody's saying nudge, nudge, wink, wink, you're kind of going, well, what if it isn't? And therefore, I don't want to invest in having thought I have, and then suddenly being embarrassed if you didn't. So, no, I can totally understand.
Exactly. So one of the things that we do in the Tough Girl Tribe, the closed Facebook group, which you are also a member of, is we do a monthly book club, which is run by the amazing Allison McArthur, who selects incredible books to read. So just an example, like back in 2018, we had The Pants of Perspective by Anna McNuff, Just a Little Run Around the World by Rosie Swall Pope, Dare to Do by Sarah Ooten, Find a Way, Diane Naid, Alone in Antarctica, Felicity Aston. You get the drift. And one of our books selections this year was your book, Sally. Woohoo!
I know. That was so exciting. Yeah, it was really exciting.
Well, I was going to say, tell me a little bit about your book.
Yeah, so I did my first Atlantic Ocean road back in 2003 into 2004, and I ended up going with my mum. And then I prepared for another road where I went with 3 other girls, and we were called the Road Girls a year or 2 later. And then afterwards, I wrote the book, and it kind of was one of the hardest things I've done in terms of confidence as much as anything else, and in terms of time as well. It took me a year and a half to write it. So it was a long, long time. And it basically just tells the tale of both those ocean roads. So it's almost like a book of 2 halves, really. The really fun and amazing one with my mum, and the really tough and difficult, gritty one with the girls.
Yeah, love it. And I think, so that book is called Sally's Odyssey, Odyssey, but ODD at sea, Odyssey. Yeah, I get it. Sorry.
Yeah, there was some really interesting, it was fun actually, because got some really interesting feedback on the your Facebook page about the book club and about my book. And one of the feedbacks was really surprising, and it really challenged me, and I was really interested by it. And that was that girls didn't like the front cover. And that was really fascinating for me, because 1, I designed the cover, and 2, I did it at a time when all the covers for all these sort of kind of these adventure books were very masculine. The kind of like the grizzled look at of the guy on the front cover with the amazing mountains all dark and moody in the back, and I really wanted to do something that really expressed my femininity and my creativity. And now it's kind of flipped. So at the time, all the women were going, oh my God, this is so empowering and so brilliant. And now the girls are saying, oh, it's a bit kind of sexy, and has it been designed by a man, and is it over-sexualizing you? So it's really fascinating, the kind of like the mood, how it's changed, and how, feminism has changed as well over the last 10 years since I wrote it. Anyway, it was just interesting for me.
No, I was going to say, well, actually, the whole conversation I actually found like really fascinating as well. So going back through, and actually, it's one of the reasons, because there was one of the comments was like, oh, I'd love to hear more about Sally, like what happened after the road. And you wrote this comment. I'm going to quickly read it, and hopefully not butcher it too much. But it basically, you basically said, okay, so after the row, I worked for BBC Radio, wrote the book, qualified as a humanitarian aid worker with Shelterbox, deployed to 2 disasters, joined incredible first women from the armed forces to climb the Chemin de la Liberté, Go on, you say it.
Chemin de Liberté. Chemin de Liberté.
Chemin de Liberté, sailed the last leg of the clip around the world, qualified as a personal trainer and worked with the athletes in the gym at the 2012 London Olympics, recorded a documentary about the most remote islands in the world, wrote articles for the BBC magazine and presented them on BBC Radio 4, which included going to the Galapagos to write about El Nino, and tried to row around Great Britain, picked up by the RNLI in Margate. I remember reading that and I was thinking, oh my goodness, there's so much more stuff that we need to discuss because we've only sort of like pinched the surface. So I suppose this is what this podcast is going to be about. It's almost like finding out more about your life after the big rose and your life as an adventurer, really. So
I mean,
take us back to that time.
Well, it's interesting because things have changed so much so rapidly. So back when I was doing all of that, and and it wasn't that long ago that I sort of kind of took a step back from rowing just so that I could have my daughter, who's now 2. So that's been a kind of like 3 or 4 years out. And people weren't, women weren't talking about adventure. There weren't that many of us. So when my mum and I rowed the Atlantic, there was only 16 women who'd ever done it in the world ever. Okay, so there wasn't tribes like yours. There wasn't conversations like yours. There wasn't a kind of like a big kind of group of women all kind of chatting and supporting each other. You were very much on your own. And so, when it's interesting, somebody asked me what I'd done, it's because there wasn't an outlet for those sort of conversations when I was doing it. And everything's different now and it's fabulous and brilliant. But I think it's really important to remember that just because it's not been said on Facebook, it doesn't mean it never existed. And actually, there are huge numbers of women who are definitely out there and have been out there for many, many, many years doing extraordinary challenges, groundbreaking work. And so it was really lovely to have this opportunity to kind of, look back at some of the stuff and feel really proud of it myself. Because sometimes, you get into normal life and I'm talking to my daughter about potty training and you kind of forget that once upon a time, you were climbing mountains and it was an incredible time.
And I suppose also going back 15 years, I suppose at the moment, even I know that I'm like bucking the trend and that my family and some of my friends really struggle and don't necessarily understand because I'm not in a traditional job. And it's more like this, I think Anna McNuff calls it this portfolio career or this jigsaw type of career. But even going back 15 years ago, for you to be able to earn a living and to make a life as an adventurer, that must have just been so against everything that people know. And it's super alien to people. And also when you say I'm an inspirational and motivational speaker, they go, oh right. Even now they go, oh, that's interesting. Be inspirational. Say something inspirational.
Yeah, exactly. It's like asking a comedian to tell you a joke. And my parents still think I should be getting a proper job. So that's really funny. Yeah, because then it just didn't happen. And if it did, it was very rare. And in the mainstream, it was just seen as a bit odd. And I really worried about that for a very long time. It took me years to become at peace with that decision, knowing it was right for me at the time when everybody else was doing something different. And still, there's a little bit inside my gut which feels as if I should have or could have or should have had a proper job, and that's building a proper career in an office kind of was the done thing. But now I'm older, I'm now in my early 40s, talking to those who have spent their time in an office job, having had that career, they'd much rather have done what I did. And I'm having to agree with them because it was pretty amazing. And it is pretty amazing. I still get, amazing opportunities. And so, it's bucking the trend and being at peace with it is hard.
Yeah. But you have done such a massive variety of different stuff. Qualifying as a humanitarian aid worker with Shelterbox, tell us more about that experience and then being deployed to 2 disasters. Yes.
So we decided, when we were casting is the wrong word, but when we were asking girls to join me for my second ocean row, one of the girls who wanted to do it was a Rotarian. She didn't end up coming on the row in the end, but she recommended Shelterbox because it was a Shelterbox charity at the time. And so went down to Helston, which is where they were based, and discovered that they are a humanitarian. They were like the guerrilla humanitarian aid workers, right? They turn up, people be on the back of a lorry with these great big green boxes full of brand new shelter box kit, which was camping kit, all spanking new, and give it out to people who'd lost everything, say in a tsunami or whatever. And also, I'd lost a friend in the tsunami. So he was on a stag do and he was out in Thailand, and unfortunately, he was drowned in his hotel room. So for me, it was very apt that we decided to choose them. And my promise to them was that I would qualify and actually take one of these big green boxes out to the people that we'd raised the money for. And that's what I did. So it was pretty hardcore training. It was an interesting charity to join at the time because it was led by kind of ex-Navy type. So it was quite hardcore. And eventually I managed to deploy to Sumatra on my first one and in Thailand for my second one. And it was, I suffer from anxiety. And I remember being exceptionally anxious before I flew out to Sumatra, and I was worried about the team dynamics. I was worried about whether I was good enough. I was worried about, would I see dead bodies? How would that be for me? So yeah, I went with a kind of my heart in my mouth, really, and it was an extraordinary and an amazing experience. And we did some good work, and that was really great. And I went again to Bangkok, but interestingly, the whole deployment thing was actually much harder in my type of job, because when you're a freelancer, you've just got to take the work when you can, and that you never know when that's going to land most of the time. So if you're in a regular position and you can say, I'm going to take this 2 weeks off to deploy, it's much easier to manage. Whereas I'd always know if they call me up, that would be the only job that I had that month and I would miss out. So in the end, life kind of didn't work out with going on that many more deployments, but it was pretty cool at the time. And they're an amazing charity.
What was life like on the ground when you were over there, and how long were you deployed for?
We were there for 2 weeks, and it was fascinating. I learned so much about humanitarian aid work that I would never have known. And actually, the vast majority of people who are not in that industry would not know either. There's this sense that, when a disaster strikes, you've got to go. I mean, you've got to get out there and you've got to give to people. And actually, you can't just turn up, get on, a lorry with all your aids and start just chucking it out at people. It doesn't work like that. And that was a real learning curve for me. It's a very structured system. So you have to work with the NGOs who are there. Each one of them are sorting out different areas. So there's first response, which was us. Then there's second response, which is, let's try and rebuild. And then there's third, and that's that ongoing process of ensuring that people kind of rebuild their livelihoods after they've rebuilt their homes. So, it takes a long time to rejuvenate and regenerate a society after a disaster. And some of these societies have gone through this again and again and again. And also, if you just pitch up and give somebody a tent, well, what about the rest of the village? How does that work in their hierarchy? And also, have they already given loads of stuff and you're just seeing the first person and giving it to them, and instead of thinking of all the other villages that may have been hit but are a little less accessible that have been forgotten? So it was massively insightful, really insightful, and so much to learn.
How did you cope emotionally being over there? I mean, I can't even imagine. I suppose I feel as though you're a very empathetic person, and I can really like see myself in other people's shoes. And how did you cope emotionally out there?
Yeah, no, it's funny you should say that, because that was one of the big things I mentioned that I was most anxious about. I definitely not a person who could be a paramedic. So, I can't separate myself from the emotive effect of really bad things happening. But funnily enough, we went to a village that had been completely wiped out by a landslide. I mean, there was no village left, and they were, bringing out bodies. And interestingly, it surprised me that I was able to hold it together. But then near the end of the first deployment, we went out to a village where a village elder, we sat with him, and he was weeping and saying, I don't know what to do for my people. I just at a loss. And that just broke me. It completely broke me, because I suppose what I was expecting, I got, and that is death and destruction. I was expecting that. So emotionally, I prepared myself for that. What I wasn't expecting was an elderly man to be sitting and crying and expressing how he felt so powerless. And that just floored me because I hadn't prepared for it. And that's kind of, that was the experience as it was at the time. It was incredible.
It's a super hard experience to go through, but then coming home, and then adjusting back to normal life, like how did that work for you?
Yeah, it was very, but I think this is an experience that lots of adventurers share, actually, the feeling that your snail shell is very heavy. You're carrying around this burden of stuff. And that was the bit I coped with the least. I found that very difficult. And, but it's interesting how give it a month or two and you're back into buying a load of crap into the house, it's, but yeah. And funny enough, I've never really adapted back into normal life. I've always had itchy feet to go and do and challenge myself. But actually that's waned over time because I realized that actually I was doing many of these, kind of challenges and adventures because I was trying to prove something to myself and other people. And now I'm at peace with that. And one of the reasons for that was trying to mend the relationship with my mother, which is now healed after we had a very difficult relationship before we did the row. So I'm not in a place where I need to prove myself anymore. And therefore the draw to go and do something deeply dangerous and hideous and kind of, push myself to the limits, I just don't have it. I don't need to do it anymore. I'm going for different reasons now.
Do you think that's changed also again after having flow?
Yeah, definitely. So, it's funny because that was something I was very nervous about when I got pregnant. So it took me 10 years to conceive, and we ended up having IVF, which was such a traumatic time. I mean, massively traumatic. I ended up having post-traumatic stress after an operation, which I'm happy not to talk about. But so Floss came along after all this trauma, and I was worried I was going to lose myself, that I was just going to be Flossie's mum. And that hasn't happened, and that feels great. But there are times when I just need to get away from her. But that doesn't mean I need to go away. I don't feel that at the moment. And she's still very young. She's only 2. It may change. And I'd like to think there's still adventures in me. But I'm in no rush for them.
How easy has it been to go on an adventure? Sorry, I called her Flo before, but
well, she's Flo. She's Flo, Flossie, Florence, Flossie Bear. She's that's the good thing about the name Flossie. You can do the Florence. You can do so much with it.
Forgot it. Are you still managing to go on adventures and to get outside and to put sort of like your health and fitness first? Has that been a difficult adjustment? Is that something you prioritize?
Oh my God. It's been massively difficult. Hugely difficult. And, I'm calling out to all the ladies who listen who's had a baby. Yo, can I have deep respect, man? Deep respect to you all, because it's really, really tough. I had an awful pregnancy, but I got through it and it was fine. I just didn't enjoy being pregnant. I didn't enjoy the kind of hooftiness of it all. I didn't enjoy everything becoming an obstacle course. The labour was god awful. It doesn't mean everybody's labour is, but mine was pretty awful, and came out the other side. And I'm an active person, and I wanted to be extremely active after I had Floss, but I just couldn't do it, couldn't physically do it, didn't have the time to do it. And it's only now, 2 years in, that I'm starting to regain myself. So I've got a lovely friend, Roz Savage, who's also an ocean rower, and we get together with some of her friends. And last year we got together, and I remember sitting weeping with the girls. It was one of those weekends. So this is the first time I've had a rest stopped for 3 years. And I wasn't lying in that. I just time to be doing nothing with friends. It's hardcore. It's pretty hardcore.
It sounds exhausting. Like I have so much respect for mothers and fathers out there who I just honestly, sometimes I don't know how they do it. Like honestly, it's just I think I know I'm coming from the perspective of the auntie, but like looking after my little 3-year-old who's like non-stop, and you're just like, oh, I think I need a break.
Yeah, and also, we're in a social media world now, and there's enough men and women who are posting their wonderful, beautiful, glossy Instagram shots of them with their family out doing amazing, exciting things, and how brilliant that is, and that's an expectation that everybody should be achieving now, and we're not. The vast majority of people are not achieving that; they're just surviving. And I put my hands up and say I survived for 3 years, and now I'm beginning to regain some time and energy to do the things that make me feel better about myself and my mental health, and that's been really great. And but it just takes time, and things always change. Whenever you're in that kind of just surviving mode, it's really important, I believe, to think that actually this doesn't have to last and won't last forever.
Do you ever look back and think, I rode an ocean? I've been a humanitarian aid worker. I've climbed mountains. I've done legs of the clip around the world. I can do this.
Yes, my God. Nothing prepared me more for the sleepless nights than doing an ocean row. Because you just, all these things, give you the mind, give you the resilience. It's resiliency training. That's what it is. The knowledge that actually, whatever happening now, however awful it is, it will get better and you will survive because you survived in the past. I couldn't have asked for a better preparation, really. It's and I always forget to acknowledge how brilliant those experiences are, because you kind of, it's a female thing, I think, and very British thing to underplay your own achievements, because it's kind of a bit uncool and a little bit sort of ostentatious if you go, yay, I'm so freaking amazing.
Well, you are so amazing.
Yeah.
I know that this is another British thing, like taking compliments.
Yeah.
Tell us more about the first women from the armed forces to climb the Chemin de la Liberté.
Oh my God, you got me going now. That was an extraordinary. Right, so I just jumped up. So I got off the second row, which was ultimately a bit of a disaster because just so much happened. You have to read the book. And then I went on my deployments with thing, and there was a lot of stuff had gone on, and there were some ghosts that I needed to put to bed about in and around teamwork, because I'm sure you've interviewed loads of women on your podcast who say all looks very glossy from the outside, but actually sometimes it really goes awry with your team, and that can be really affecting, and that had happened on a few occasions for me. So when I went on this Chemin de Liberté thing, it was with these extraordinary women. So we had Jo Salter, who was the first female fighter pilot in the RAF, Moira Cameron, who was the first female beefeater, yeoman of the guard. We had Suzanne Dando, who was a gymnast back in the 1970s, Commonwealth gold. It was just an extraordinary group of women, and I was really nervous. Again, the self-doubt crept in. I was exceptionally anxious about my ability to do it, as well as my ability to get on with the team. And they were so extraordinary, nurturing and giving of their time and energy. And when we got to the very highest peak, and we'd been trekking for 2 days and it was downhill all the way from there, I was really, really scared. I'm not very good, not with heights, but with, huge, great big crevasses, and you got a 40-pound backpack on, and I started weeping, and I had to wear some sunglasses so the girls didn't spot that I was getting really quite upset. And Suze saw me and said, "Are you okay?" I said, "Oh, I'm actually really, really frightened." And they helped me down every step of the way. I mean, we were singing and I was weeping. I couldn't see a bloody thing, but it was brilliant and difficult.
Could you just want to tell us a little bit more about was it a mountain that you climbed, or was it a trail, or what was it?
Yes. So the Chemin de Liberté is a trail through the Pyrenees from France into Spain. And it's very famous, and it's called the Chemin de Liberté, the Freedom Trail, because during the Second World War, an amazing woman called Nancy Wake, who was a spy for the British, but she was actually Australian. She died a couple of years ago, just shy of her 100th birthday. So she was an SOE, so a special operations of executive. So she was a spy, basically. She led, during the night, men who'd been downed, sort of like our guys, up and over the Chemin de Liberté to freedom. Actually, they didn't go to freedom. Mostly they went to jail in Spain, but it was far better to be in jail in Spain than to be in the arms of the Nazis, who probably would have shot them. So they would have been chased by the Nazis up and over the mountain. And it's a particularly tough trek because they chose a route that was difficult to be chased on. And we went during the day. We stayed in huts, shepherds' huts along the way. When they were being pursued, they were having to just keep going and do it in the dark. And that was a very humbling experience. It was hard. And we managed to get into Spain. I had two of the biggest blisters on my heels that I've ever seen. They were like the size of dinner plates. If you can have a dinner plate on your heel, it felt like it anyway.
How did that all come about, and how did you get invited along on it? Because it sounds incredible. I mean, challenging, but incredible.
Well, funny enough, I was introduced by somebody to a guy called Major Phil Packer. He's not a major anymore. He's out of the army. He's retired. But he did the London Marathon. He walked it, and this was some years ago now. So if anybody remembers the story, he had been hit by a bomb in Afghanistan. I think, I need to kind of look that up. But he basically was very badly injured. Told him he wasn't going to walk. Has walked again from a partial spinal injury, and he walked it over, I think it might have been even a week or maybe longer, the London Marathon. Either way, I was introduced to him, and he in turn introduced me to Suze, because Susan Dando was organising this expedition to raise money for the Royal British Legion. And Phil had said, "Oh my God, well, you're going to have to introduce Sally to the team." And that's how I got the invitation. And of course I said yes. And it was brilliant.
Oh, I love it. What team dynamics? I mean, that must have been really interesting for you, because especially after your last row experience, then coming into like another type of team environment, although slightly different from not being on an ocean, and you could obviously get away from people. How do you approach team dynamics?
I don't know if I've got it right in the past, I have to admit, because when it came to rowing in particular, you tend to pick the girls who want to go, and there's not very many of them. So you just think, right, they want to go, they're in the boat, let's do this. And that's and that brings its fair share of challenges. I think that's changed a lot. I think the environment's changed, and also far more people are going on adventures and therefore bringing in the expertise to do it. It was all very, by the seat of your pants back in those days, which makes it sound like it was ages ago. Sometimes you've just got to just give it a go and see what happens, and accept that, oh my God. So, what I will tell you about this was one of the worst experiences of my adventuring career. And that was, I was on a support yacht for an ocean rowing race, and I won't name names, but either way, the skipper was a drunk and also a drug addict, and he totally lost it on the boat, and we were stuck, a very small crew, so there was 4 of us and the skipper, in the middle of the ocean, and he was completely losing it, and it was the most frightening and awful experience I've ever had in my adventuring career, to the point where we actually thought he was going to do something extremely dangerous, and he tried to hit me on the boat, and it was really, he tried to attack me, and it was just awful. And you just cannot. But sometimes teams are out of your control. The selection of a team and who you go with. And you've just got to trust that the person who's doing that is doing the best job they can, and sometimes they don't, and that's just how life is. But what it did do is it bonded the rest of us together like glue. I mean, we really looked after and supported each other in that experience, but it was pretty dreadful.
Oh God, I'm so sorry that's happened to you. That's absolutely awful.
It's a learning experience. It's a learning experience. And what it has taught me is that actually you know, you've got, if you're going to do something like that, then it probably is quite important to be sure that you know well, you know what, I didn't even learn, I don't think I don't know what I learned from that experience, except that I survived it, and it was great that I survived it.
You got through it, and it didn't put you off boats or sailing.
No, it didn't. No, it didn't. But you know what? I'm interested in writing. I think it would make you remember. Do you remember Dead Calm, the film?
Yes.
Yeah, think that. But wouldn't it be fun to write a 2-part drama about that experience? You know, I do think that actually sometimes if things are too good and too fun and too brilliant, it's brilliant, but you don't really have a story to tell. And I do like a good story. And that was a great story.
I mean, actually, even just getting over that, did you find that that you needed to like write about it, to like get it out of your head, or was it something that you still think about? Or
at the time, it wasn't. It definitely was a tricky one for me, because I was just about to start IVF, so I was in a really weird place anyway. And I did think about writing it, but I'm not really that good a writer, especially not of fictionalized stuff. So I would have needed to fictionalize that experience. And so it's sort of, it's gone onto the back burner and whatever. Well, if there's anybody out there who wants to take it on, I'm happy to tell them the story and they can do it. But
I suppose, yeah. I think more about like, if you're still processing, as in not writing for other people, just as in writing, right, as in like a journaling.
Like journaling. No, yeah. Journaling. God, I'm useless at that. And I have tried. You know what? I actually put a book in the toilet. So I was thinking, when do I actually have a moment to sit down and just contemplate my navel for a little bit? And that's the time. And
I thought you meant like you put a book physically in the toilet, and I was like,
no. So I put it in the bathroom. I put my journal in the bathroom, thinking I'm going to have a moment now, just to kind of write down my thoughts. But you know what? I just don't do it. It's just not me. It isn't me, and I accept that, and it's okay. And I know journaling works for a lot of people. It just doesn't work for me.
Do you know, that's part of the process of finding out what works for you and what doesn't. So that's totally cool.
Yeah.
Tell us about Clipper Round the World, because it's something that's been on my list for ages, but every time I look at it, I'm just like, it is so expensive to do. It looks incredible, but it's just a big chunk of money to do it. How did that come about for you, and how did you pay for it? What happened there?
I was super cheeky, actually, and I approached them and said, look, I've been working for BBC Radio. I've been doing some stuff with the BBC, and I'm sure, if you took me on as one of your legs as a media person, that we can, get something off the ground here. And that's exactly what they did. So I went on the yacht as a media person.
Okay, I'm gonna do that. Oh, nobody else can do that
either. And yeah, again, you know what? It's funny. I do suffer dreadfully from anxiety. I have all my life, and it's an old friend. And gosh, when I went for the training, having never, there was such a deep expectation. I felt that, one, I was coming on as a media person, so therefore I was different from everybody else, and two, because I had done the ocean road, that somehow I would be good at sailing. I've since discovered I'm not good at sailing. I'm just not good at it. I love it, but I get very, very seasick, which is not great. And also a lot of things can go very wrong very quickly. And so when I arrived in Jamaica to start the leg, by the way, their training is second to none. It was just incredible. If you want to learn how to sail well and sail well quickly, then Clipper is the way to do it. And the crew and the skippers were just extraordinary, unbelievable. I mean, just unbelievable. Anyway, I arrived in Jamaica, but because I'd been so frightened and so anxious, I completely lost my voice. I was really ill and lost my voice. So I got there and I couldn't speak. So I got on the boat and off we went, and got to New York, and I slipped in one of the buildings accidentally and dislocated my toe. I'm a bit of a calamity Jane, right? And I ended up spending 5 hours in an A&E in New York. And then thought, that's it. I can't believe it. After all this worry and anxiety, and we've had a really great time. We won our race, which was just amazing. That was my adventure over. I was so gutted. But you know what? I pushed on through. The toe healed fine. Off we went, did the rest. And then I broke my thumb off the back end of the Isle of Wight, of all places. I'm like, seriously? That was pretty scary, actually.
So did you go from Jamaica to New York to the Isle of Wight?
No, so we went from Jamaica to New York to Nova Scotia, then across to Cork, then down to Holland and into Amsterdam from there. So there's I can't say what the port's called. I can't remember what it's called. So you go along through the English Channel and stop off in Holland, and then back up to Hull, which is where the end was. So I broke my thumb in just off the Isle of Wight, and we were going very slowly. We had no wind past Dover Harbour, and I just said, I said, just drop me off here. I'm happy to get off the boat now. I said this to skipper. I felt for the first time I knew how my teammate Joe, who was on my rowing boat on the second adventure, who got off the boat and disqualified us from the race, but for the first time I knew how she felt. I felt like a loose end. I felt that I was no longer any value to the team. I felt traumatized by what had happened anyway. People didn't talk to me. Nobody spoke to me. It was the weirdest thing. Nobody on the crew sat down and said, "How are you getting on?" It was almost like everybody stepped back. It was so extraordinary and little support I got from the team. And that's not because, they did anything wrong. I think in those sort of situations, sometimes people don't know what to say, so they don't say anything. I was thinking, I'll just jump off and swim into harbour. We were close enough for me to do it. And the skipper said, no, you're staying to the end. So I went 2 more days with my thumb still snapped in half.
Oh.
And then went to Amsterdam to get it fixed. They have the most amazing medical service. You just walk straight in and they, kind of refixed it. And I sailed back into Hull, having completed the last leg. It was really... Yeah, it was such an up and downy trip, literally, like the ocean. So yeah, and my husband tells me all the time that I'm just a calamity, that things happen, and you know what? I think things happen all the time to a lot of different people, but they don't share. Yeah. And I'm very open to sharing, saying that things go wrong, people get hurt, relationships don't work out as you want them to. And to be open and honest about that so that people can go in prepared. Going back to your question about what it was like to go out to Sumatra, the bit that floored me was the fact that I hadn't prepared for that experience with that gent, that older man. And what I was prepared for was all the awful stuff. If you go into any expedition or any adventure or, any kind of walk of life, not having really kind of processed the fact that things could go very difficult, go very wrong, and people do get hurt and relationships don't work out, then you're not prepared for them. And that's when things can fall you.
What a very strange experience. I mean, the only way that I can think about it is sometimes on maybe challenges or expeditions is that people can end up, in order for them to get through it, they need to protect themselves emotionally. And they need to lock it down. Yeah. And actually, sometimes they don't have the capacity to, not to show empathy or kindness, but to take on anybody else's emotional needs. So I'm not saying that as in like that you needed like extra emotional support, but as in...
Well, I did.
You did, yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, that's why then actually the Clipper was before the Chemin de Liberté. And that's why I went into that experience very, very warily and with a great deal of anxiety because of that incident and how it was kind of what happened on the boat. And I was worried because I knew I was going to be frightened of the heights. I knew I was going to be frightened of the challenge. And the girls just stepped up to the plate. They really stepped up to the plate, and actually made that adventure far more rewarding because I'd gone through what I'd gone through before.
Yeah. Tell me about the row around Great Britain.
Oh yeah.
So was that solo or was that a team?
Calamity Jane strikes again. So I had a phone call from a lovely lady from Cardiff, Charlene, and she had prepared to go around Great Britain on a row around Great Britain with her boyfriend, now fiance. So he just proposed, and it was going to be extraordinary. And then he dumped her. Ooh. Just a few months before they left. And of course, I'd been in a situation where I was going to go with my boyfriend to row across the Atlantic Ocean. It hadn't worked out, and at the time, I was yearning for a new challenge. And I said, okay, great, let's do this. And we prepped, and we didn't have a lot of time to get ready. We went to the start at Tower Bridge, and like you said, we were rescued by the RNLI at Margate. And I was so glad it was over. Because, and this is probably a challenge to any women out there, I feel that two women in the boat that we had were never going to get round. The boat was completely inappropriate for the challenge because it was too, the windage on it was too great. So we had a very strong northerly wind, and it just pushed us straight into a place called Botany Bay. And there was no way we could control it. Between us, we just weren't strong enough to stop the boat from going straight into the beach. So if I did that again, I'd go in a very different design boat, one that was ideal for going around Great Britain. Very, very few teams have made it. I think maybe only 3 teams have ever made it round.
I do believe it is one of the toughest rowing challenges because of the currents and the tides and everything else.
Yeah, unbelievable. And I was feeling quite. Afterwards, I was, oh my God, was it my fault? Was it because I hadn't studied enough about because we'd put our anchor down, but it was a sandy bottom, and the anchor had nothing to hold on to, so we were just drifting further into the beach. And I was thinking, was it because I didn't look at the maps, and actually the charts didn't say that it was a sandy bottom, so there's nothing I could have done. And actually, what I did realise from going on that trip was I love being in an ocean rowing boat. I loved it. And actually, I was really confident I made the right choices at the time. So that was really reassuring for me, that I just didn't let my ego say, come on, we can do this. Let's fight against it. We fought. We didn't win. We called for help. We were rescued before a drama turned into a proper crisis. And that's sometimes the best you can get out of an experience. And bloody hell, I'm pleased that actually we were rescued, because it could have been a complete disaster.
Yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. Would you do another row? Like, is that still a desire or something that tickles your fancy?
Oh no, it isn't actually. No, but what I'd love to do is spend more time living out of a rucksack. Living on your wits, without all the gumph. And I'd like to do that, and I'd love to do lots of that with Floss as well. So more camping, being outside, walking. So I went away with Roz again this weekend, and we went to Mid Wales with some incredible women who've done just such amazing, extraordinary things, and just walked and talked and drank wine, and it was just brilliant to get out there and get some fresh air. It was awesome and simple. Awesome but simple.
I was going to be really rude there, say, "Where's my invite?"
Yeah, well, you're not in the team, baby.
No. One day I'll be invited. So, Sally, I want to ask you some quick fire questions. Are you ready?
Yeah, okay.
Okay, now I should say my questions may be quick, but your answers don't necessarily have to be quick. Okay. What book are you currently reading at the moment?
Oh, it's called Prophecy, and it's rubbish. Oh, it's so rubbish. But I've committed to getting to the end of it.
So you wouldn't just stop and just be like, nah, put it in the toilet?
No, but I've started Milkman, which has got the Man Booker Prize. Oh, I'm finding that really tough as well.
You could do it. What music do you listen to?
Right, so I've discovered Spotify. I know people it's been around for a long time, but there's a playlist called The Most Beautiful Music in the World, or Most Beautiful Songs in the World, and I put that on, and so I couldn't tell you who any of the artists are. And actually, funny enough, I sort of don't really want to know. I just enjoy the experience of it.
Love it. What's your favourite movie?
Oh my God, you know what? I've actually, funny enough, I've started a little list of movies, my favourite movies. I've put it in here as, top movies of all time type thing. And I can tell you what it is. Shall I tell you what it is?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Yeah, back with me. Wait. Here we go. Best films ever. And they all begin with the letter G, or almost. Gattaca. Do you remember Gattaca?
Yes, that's is that the guy?
The dystopian future where there's with selection and stuff of gene selection of peoples.
I know the movie. I'm waiting for you to continue reading down the list.
Yeah, right, yeah, as good as it gets.
Yes.
Which is such an amazingly beautifully written film. and Gross Point Blank, which I think is funny as hell. Do you remember that film? You're probably too young for
that
it.
one. I'll have to watch that one.
Curly-haired girl, Minnie Driver in it. It's proper 80s.
No, total blank.
That's I'm showing me age.
No, not at all. Not at all. What do you think is your worst habit?
Oh, being critical. I'm dreadfully critical of myself and my husband in particular.
We'll move on quickly. What is your favourite type of food to eat when you're on expeditions, and your favourite food to eat normally?
So I'm wheat-free celiac, so anything, I don't mind on expedition as long as I can eat it. So it's always a joy. That's something that's actually quite tough to do. And at home I love Italian.
Love it. What time do you wake up in the morning?
Oh gosh, well, it depends what time Floss is up. So any time from 5 o'clock until 7:30.
Are you a morning person or like a night owl?
I'm lucky in that I'm pretty good at both times. Actually, I can wake up with a smile on my face and stay up quite late and still be quite happy.
Do you have any pets?
We did have 2 dogs. So Harry, a black Labrador, we lost him a couple of years ago to bowel cancer very suddenly, and then my little baby dog Bertie, the little terrier cross, bit flossy when she was little, so I had to move him out. So we went to my mum and dad. So he's still around, but he's there now and he's happy. But otherwise, we've got goldfish.
Do you have a mantra or a quote or words that you sort of live by?
There's that lovely phrase, and I'm going to get it all wrong, but it's, you don't know what's at sea until you know you've moved away from the shore. Do you recognise that one? How it goes? I had it written down somewhere, and I stuck it up on my thing, and now I've lost it. It's say
it again.
You never know what it's like to be. Oh my God, I can't remember. I'll let you know. And you can,
that's okay.
So but you have to move away from the shore. If you how do you? Oh God,
shit. Is it about ships?
No, it's not. If you can't, right, I'm looking it up. I'm looking it up as we speak. If courage to sail away from the shore. That's a quote. Okay, quotes. Until you have courage to lose sight of the shore, you'll never. Oh, no, that's not it. You'll never know the terror of being forever lost at sea. Okay, that wasn't the inspirational quote I was looking for. That's actually.
I think all the people will remember is being lost at sea.
Yes. Here we go. You cannot discover new oceans unless you have the courage to lose sight of the shore.
I like it. Are you coffee or tea?
Oh, coffee, big star. Black.
Winter or summer?
Autumn and spring.
Ooh. No, you got to be like, which do you prefer, winter or summer? I
can't do it because
you love them both.
No, I don't actually. I love autumn and spring because the weather's just about right, and there's the feeling of spring, the new beginnings, and autumn, the kind of resting and getting ready to hibernate.
Wine or beer?
Wine.
Ooh, what flavor? Rosé, white or red?
White. I'm very limited. I've got a very limited palate. It's a Chardonnay or nothing.
Amazing. I think that's it for my quick fire questions. You've done well.
Oh, brilliant.
So, Sally, I was going to say, final words of advice, final words of wisdom for other women out there who want to live a less conventional life, who want to take on different challenges, who want to, be the best version of themselves. What advice would you have?
Okay. First up, listen to my podcast.
Woohoo! Oh my God, sorry. We haven't even discussed your podcast. Tell everybody about your podcast.
So it's called The Well Beginners, and you can go to www.thewell-beginners.com, The Well Beginners. Okay, so it's on Spotify, iTunes, and it's basically a journey to well-being, and I'm taking it with a friend of mine called Jules. And it's a really gentle, pragmatic, not too woo-woo, plenty of way-hey kind of advice from experts. So we're just kind of bringing in experts who kind of can give us some advice on how to improve our well-being. So that's that one. Advice would be, ask yourself why you're going. Why? What is it that's driving you to take on these challenges? And ask the deeper question about that, because if you go and come back and that hasn't solved what it is that the questions that you're asking, if it hasn't answered those questions, then you need to kind of just evaluate and take stock of why that is, and what you can do to support yourself in answering those questions, and be open to the fact that sometimes you take on challenges because you want to change yourself, and maybe you don't have to change yourself. Being content with your own lot is something that takes a long time to work on. I know, because I'm there, and that's okay. I don't know where that was going there, but I was trying to formulate it in my own mind as to how best to express that. I spent many years chasing my own tail, trying to prove to myself and other people that I had value. Actually, funny enough, at the weekend when I was with Roz and the girls, we did a thing where we talked about what we thought were our truths, and actually they turned out to be lies about ourselves. And my truth that I'd held for so long was that I wasn't enough, and that I didn't have a voice. And it's taken me until recently to realize that I am enough, and I have a voice, and I'm going to use it. So ask yourself what your truths, lies are, and tackle them. That's probably the only thing I can suggest.
I know you've got the Well Beginners podcast, which is awesome. You've just started that with Jules, but you've also got a children's book as well. Do you just want to share a little bit more about your children's book?
I know. You know what? I got word from the agent yesterday that the publishers haven't gone for it. Oh
no!
I know, but it's okay. You know, J.K. Rowling was turned down by many people before her success, so I'm going to push on through. Yeah, it's a children's book, and it's about the road with mum, and it's a young girl asking her mum what she was before she was a mum, and her mum showing her, you know, that actually she had a life before babies, and actually, you know, she could have a life after babies and do stuff with her daughter too. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic! And is that the? I was going to say, you always have lots of things going on. So we've got the podcast, the book. Is there anything else going on that we need to be aware of?
Yes. I'm going to put it out to the ladies who are listening, actually. So I'm about to start a campaign called Active Pregnancy, Better for Mum and Baby. So if there's anybody out there who has a view, opinion, expertise in that field, who wants to be part of the steering group, or just wants to kind of get in touch and say, oh my God, I have a thought about that, then I'd love to hear from you, because what we want to do is create a Active Pregnancy Week and promote the opportunities that women can have to remain active throughout and after their pregnancies. And it's not about shaming women into doing lots of exercise. It's just saying to them, you know what, the research says, don't be afraid of doing activity. You know, it won't cause miscarriages. So get out there and enjoy being active.
Love it. And where's the best place for people to reach out to you, to connect with you, to follow you, and So sallykettle.com. You can get me there. There's an email on there that you can just drop me a line, Sally at sallykettle.com. You can do that too. Twitter, Instagram. I've managed to secure Sally Kettle in a big way across all media channels. That's awesome. And I'll be making sure that I put all the links as well to your website, your Twitter, your Instagram, your Facebook, and all that good stuff. Sally, thank you so much for coming back on the Tough Girl Extra podcast and sharing more about your life and everything that's been going on. Absolutely fascinating.
Thank you.
A massive thank you to everybody who tuned in and listened to that episode. I didn't really introduce myself at the start. I know it's a bit random, but I just sort of assume that everybody who listens to the Tough Girl podcast sort of knows who I am now, which may not necessarily be the case if this is the first episode that you've listened to. But anyway, my name is Sarah Williams. I'm the host of the Tough Girl podcast, and I get to interview these incredible women. And like we said at the beginning of the episode, I spoke with Sally back in August 2015, so almost 4 years ago. And it's just been such an incredible journey to even even get to this point. Who knows where? I didn't actually know when I started the Tough Girl podcast, where it was going to go, what it was going to lead to. And it has been this phenomenal, incredible experience. So the 4th of August is a special day. It's almost like the 4th year birthday, which I will be celebrating. There's going to be 4 brand new episodes coming out on the 4th of August. And there's also going to be Tough Girl extra episodes coming out. So you're going to want to make sure that you subscribe to the podcast to ensure you don't miss out any of these bonus content, which is going to be coming out throughout the month of August. I'd also be subscribed to the Tough Girl Challenges Facebook page and come and follow me at Tough Girl Challenges on Instagram, because there'll be more announcements coming out in the run up to the 4th birthday party on the 4th of August. A big thank you to all of my patrons all around the world who are supporting me and the podcast. With your help, we've surpassed 800,000 downloads, which is incredible. I obviously do want to hit the big 1 million. And if you want to be involved in that, if you want to be part of this mission, if you want to help it reach an incredible 1 million listeners all over the world, then please do subscribe. Please do become a patron. Go and check out Patreon, patreon.com/Tough Girl Podcast. Patreon, the website, is basically a website which allows creators like myself to produce this content and to be able to earn a living from it. So many of you may know that I do live at home with my parents, who are amazing, who are total legends. But, I would like to move out at some point. I am getting older, and I'm not sure that there's a cutoff of when you need to leave home, but I am turning 38 this year, and I have been living with my parents for the past 4 years while I grow Tough Girl Challenges. It's still not in the place where it's financially viable for me to do that, but it's getting closer. And, the more patrons out there, the sooner that will be able to happen. But even if you could just subscribe at the $2 level, $5 level, it really does add up. I'd love to reach 250 patrons by the 4th of August. So if you have been listening to Tough Girl Podcast and you want to support and you want to help me reach this incredible goal of connecting with 1 million women and men out there who have been inspired by these incredible women, then please do go and sign up as a patron. Thank you so much to everyone who listens. Please do leave a review. Have an awesome day wherever you are, whatever you're doing, whether you are driving the car, whether you are commuting, whether you are running, cycling, getting out and about, whether you are dealing with injury at the moment, or whether you are feeling super fit and on fire. I really do appreciate it. But have an incredible day. I am supporting you wherever you are. Believe in yourself, because I believe in you. You can do it. Put your mind to it. Work hard. Set that goal. Get after it and go and make it happen. Have an incredible day. And I'll speak to you next Tuesday. All right. Take care. Lots of love. Bye.